Most valuable Washington quarter dollars that have stunned collectors and sold for jaw-dropping prices. Some of these quarters, which you might mistake for just 25 cents, from rare errors to key mintages, these coins are true legends in the collecting world. What if I told you that a coin sitting in your pocket, a coin that looks like an ordinary quarter, some of the rarest 1973 Washington era quarters have shocked collectors and auction houses by fetching jaw-dropping sums? Historical background of the 1973 Washington quarter. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington. Designed by sculptor John Flanagan, it featured Washington's bust on the obverse and an eagle on the reverse. By 1973, the Washington quarter had already been in production for over 40 years, but the U.S. Mint was still grappling with the aftermath of the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from circulating quarters. Instead, quarters were made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between two outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The most valuable 1973-era Washington quarters. 1973 Double Die Obverse DDO. Value, depending on grade and strength of the doubling. These can fetch anywhere from $5,000 to $40,000 plus. Ultra-high-grade examples could climb higher at auction. 1973 Off-Center Strike. Value, $200 to $5,000 for dramatic errors. 1973 Clipped Planchette Error. Value, $100 to $1,000, depending on size and visibility of the clip. 1973 Transitional Planchette Error. Value, these transitional errors can bring $25,000 to over $100,000 at auction. Some unique examples could realistically cross into the million-dollar territory if discovered today. 1973 Broad Strike Error. Value, typically $100 to $1,500, depending on condition, die breaks, and cuts. Value, $50 to several $1,000s, depending on the size and location of the cut. Auction records for rare 1973 era quarters. Over the years, several 1973 era quarters have made headlines in the numismatic world. A 1973 DDO quarter in mint state sold for nearly $25,000 at auction. An extreme off-center strike with a full date brought for $1,800. A rumored transitional error struck on a silver planchette has been valued at over $100,000, though such examples remain exceedingly rare. Collectors are willing to pay massive premiums for coins that combine rarity, dramatic visual appeal, and pristine condition. How to identify a rare 1973 era quarter? Here's how you can check if your 1973 quarter might be one of these high-value treasures. Examine the date and lettering. Look for strong doubling on Liberty, and In God We Trust. Check the strike. Off-center strikes are easy to spot. Make sure the date is still visible. Look for missing metal. Clipped plankets will have a clean crescent-shaped chunk missing. Weigh the coin. A normal 1973 quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, you may have a transitional planchette error. Inspect the rim and fields. Broad strikes and cuts show dramatic deformities that stand out. Use magnification. A jeweler's loupe can help spot small die cracks or doubling. What if I told you that a simple 1967 Washington quarter, a coin worth only 25 cents on paper, imagine pulling out an old quarter from a drawer, or finding one in your change, only to discover that it's not just spare change, it's a life-changing fortune. The 1967-era Washington quarter is one of the most mysterious and valuable coins of the modern U.S. minting era. History of the 1967 Washington quarter. To combat this, the U.S. Mint removed silver from quarters in 1965, switching to a copper-nickel-clad composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between two nickel-copper outer layers. In 1965, 1966, and 1967, no mint marks were placed on coins. Why? Because collectors were hoarding certain mint-marked coins, and the mint wanted to discourage speculation. The rarest 1967-era quarters and their values. 1967 Silver Planchette Quarter. A genuine 1967 quarter struck on a silver planchette has sold for $7,000 to $15,000, and rare pristine examples could fetch even more. 1967 Double Die Quarters. Strong double dies can bring $500 to $5,000, depending on clarity and grade. 1967 Off-Center Error Quarters. The more dramatic the off-center, the higher the value. Some sell for $250 to $3,500 plus. 1967 Wrong Planchette Strikes. These rarities can be worth $1,000 to $10,000 plus. 1967 missing clad layer quarters. Collectors pay anywhere from $500 to $2,500 plus for these. Full brockage errors. These are extremely rare and can sell for $5,000 plus. Record auction sales. Here are some real-world examples of big sales. A 1967 quarter on a silver planchette sold at heritage auctions for over $12,000. A dramatic off-center strike went for nearly $3,000. A certified double-die error example brought in for $1,000 plus. And these are just the public auctions. Private sales often go higher, especially for pristine, certified examples. Transitional rarity. The silver to clad era produced some of the most collectible errors. Auction drama. They consistently set record-breaking sales. Hidden treasures. Many remain undiscovered in collections or rolls. Historic value. They tell the story of America's changing economy. How to spot a rare 1967 error quarter. Here's how to tell if you might be holding one. Weigh the coin. Normal clad quarters weigh 5.67 grams. Silver planchette errors weigh 6.25 grams. Check the edge. A clad coin shows a copper stripe on the edge. A silver planchette is solid silver color all around. Look closely at the details. Doubling in letters or date. Off-center strike. Missing clad layers. Get it certified. PCGS or NGC authentication dramatically increases value. We're talking about the legendary 1969 Washington quarter error coins, rare treasures that turn pocket change into life-changing fortune. So, don't blink, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for in your 1969 quarter, how to spot the rarest errors, and why collectors go crazy bidding thousands, even millions, for the rarest examples. Stay with me until the end, because this coin might just be your hidden jackpot, the history of the... But the late 1960s was a turbulent time for U.S. coinage. After the Coinage Act of 1965, silver was removed from quarters, replacing the 90% silver composition with a copper-nickel-clad planchette. By 1969, all quarters were clad, and while millions were minted at both the Philadelphia No Mint Mark and Denver D Mint Mark mints, mistakes inevitably slipped through the presses. Types of rare 1969 error Washington quarters. 1969 double die obverse DDO. These are extremely rare and highly sought after by collectors. Value. Depending on condition, these coins can bring $10,000 to $50,000 plus, and in pristine examples with strong doubling, they can soar even higher into the six-figure range at auctions. Off-center strike. Value. These can sell from $100 to $5,000, depending on how far off-center the strike is. Clipped planchette. Value. Clipped planchettes can range from $50 to $1,000 plus, depending on the severity and visibility of the clip. Transitional error. Wrong planchette. Value. These transitional errors can fetch $10,000 to over $100,000, depending on rarity. Die breaks and cuts. Value. Anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s, based on the size and placement. Auction records. When 1969 quarters make headlines. Over the years, certain 1969 error quarters have shocked the numismatic community. A 1969 double die quarter in high grade once sold for over $40,000 at auction. Dramatic off-center strikes combined with full dates have brought $3,500 plus. Transitional error coins, such as those struck on experimental or leftover planchets, have fetched six figures, reaching into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Imagine turning over a coin worth a quarter and realizing it could pay off your car, your home, or even fund your retirement. How to identify a rare 1969 error quarter. If you think you might have one of these treasures in your collection or coin jar, here's what to check. Look for doubling, inspect Liberty, and In God We Trust. Check the date. Make sure the year 1969 is bold and clean. Errors often appear around the numbers. Inspect the strike. Is the design off-center? Misaligned? Any missing chunks? Weigh the coin. If it doesn't weigh the standard 5.67 grams for a clad quarter, it may be a wrong planchette error. Use magnification. A jeweler's loupe or microscope can reveal hidden doubling or die cracks. Underscore. What if I told you that a simple 25-cent coin in your pocket could actually be worth even millions of dollars? The 1966 error Washington quarter dollar. This coin, born during one of the most dramatic shifts in American coinage history, holds some of the most exciting and valuable minting mistakes ever discovered. From 1932 to 1964, quarters were struck in 90% silver and 10% copper. But by the early 1960s, the price of silver was skyrocketing, and Americans were hoarding silver coins for their melt value. This caused massive shortages in circulation. In 1965, the U.S. Mint made a monumental change. Quarters, dimes, and eventually half-dollars would no longer be made of silver. Instead, they switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between two nickel-copper layers. The rarest 1966 error quarters and their values. 1966 Silver Planchette Error Quarter, the Holy Grail. A genuine 1966 quarter struck on a leftover silver planchette is extremely rare. At auctions, these have sold for $7,000 to $15,000, with some rumored private sales reaching six figures. 1966 double-die error quarters, values range from $500 to $5,000, depending on clarity and grade. 1966 off-center strike quarters, the more dramatic the off-center, the higher the value. Can sell for anywhere between $200 and $3,500 plus. 1966 wrong planchette quarters, these are extremely rare and highly collectible. Values range from $1,000 to $10,000 plus. 1966 missing clad layer quarters, these errors look dramatically different and are instantly recognizable. Worth between $500 and $1,500 plus. Record auction sales, real-life examples, a 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchette sold for over $12,000 at Heritage Auctions. A dramatic off-center 1966 quarter fetched $1,800. A double-die error example has been auctioned for $4,200. These results prove that the 1966 quarter is not just collectible, it's one of the most profitable transitional era coins to find in circulation. Transition period rarity. Coins from the 1965-1967 era are unique because of the mint struggles. Hidden treasures. These errors were not widely documented until years later. Big auction headlines. They continue to set new price records. Emotional value. They represent the end of silver coinage in America. How to spot a rare 1966 error quarter. If you're checking your coins, here's how to identify one of these treasures. Weight test. A clad quarter 1965 plus weighs 5.67 grams. A silver planchette quarter 1964 or error 1965-66 weighs 6.25 grams. If your 1966 weighs 6.25 grams, you may have a silver error. Edge test. Clad quarters show a copper stripe on the edge. Silver quarters are solid silver all around. Visual inspection. Look for doubled letters, off-center strikes, or missing clad layers. Professional grading. PCGs and NGC certification is essential if you want to sell for top value. One of the most legendary coins in U.S. history is the 1965 error Washington quarter, a coin that slipped through the cracks of the U.S. Mint's major transition from silver to clad coinage. Collectors across the globe are hunting for this rarity, and some of these coins have sold for jaw-dropping amounts at auction. Because in this video, we're diving deep into the history, errors, and the mind-blowing values of the 1965 Washington quarter. The history of the 1965 Washington quarter. Up until 1964, U.S. dimes, quarters, and half-dollars were struck in 90% silver and 10% copper. But rising silver prices in the early 1960s created a crisis. People began hoarding silver coins for their melt value rather than spending them. Why the 1965 quarter is famous for errors. When the mint switched from silver to clad in 1965, not every silver planchette, blank coin disc, was removed from production. Some silver plankets intended for the 1964 quarters accidentally got fed into presses and struck with the 1965 date. That means there are 1965 quarters struck in 90% silver, even though officially no such coin should exist. This makes them some of the most valuable Washington quarters ever known. The rarest 1965 error quarters and their values. 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchette, most valuable error. At auction, these coins have sold for $7,000, $10,000, even up to $16,000 or more depending on condition. Some unconfirmed reports even suggest private sales reaching into the six-figure range. 1965 double-die error quarters. Values can range from $500 to $5,000, depending on visibility and grade. 1965 off-center strike quarters. Values range from $200 to $3,000 plus. 1965 quarters struck on wrong plankets. These minting blunders are extremely rare. Prices vary widely, but can easily reach $1,000 to $10,000 plus. Missing clad layer quarters. Values range from $500 to $2,500 plus. Record auction sales, proof of value. Let's look at a few real-world sales to see how much these coins can go for. A 1965 silver error quarter once sold for over $12,000 at Heritage Auctions. Another example graded MS62, fetched $8,000 plus. A dramatic off-center 1965 quarter sold for $2,300. A double-die error example reached for $1,500. Collectors are willing to pay huge premiums for these coins because of their historical significance and extreme rarity. How to identify a 1965 silver error quarter? If you're checking your change or collection, here's how to spot a potential silver 1965 quarter. Weight test. Silver quarters 1964 and earlier weigh 6.25 grams. Clad quarters 1965 and later weigh 5.67 grams. A silver 1965 error will weigh 6.25 grams. Edge test. Clad quarters show a copper-colored stripe on the edge. Silver quarters have a solid silver edge.